Welcome all, I'm David Nebsa. I work for Jigger at the Loan Programs Office. And I'll just say this, as at least Rick Cunahan of Andil can testify to, I've been working on this issue. I've been making problems and searching for solutions since Rick and I left college many years ago. And I have never seen, in all my time on demand-side management, distributed resources, and for that matter, utility regulatory issues, I've never seen excitement like this. And I know I'll offend many people before this is over, but I'll just say, no offense to the PV crowd, the PV hockey stick was all mañana, mañana, and then all of a sudden the PV hockey stick took off amazingly. We see the revolution, the EV revolution. It's the same demand side. I think it's been more of a steady build over the years and decades. And now with virtual power plants, as we just heard from Jigger and Sherry, I think are the next. And I was just at Distributech last week, and it was oversold, 17,000 people. And guess what? And I don't know if you've been there recently, the key topics weren't vegetation management anymore, and all the essential reliability issues that utilities face. All the energy last week in San Diego was around VPPs and aggregating DERs into a size and scale and quality to make them a utility grade resource, which I would submit is a VPP. And we saw that, I saw that on the trade floor, I saw that on the sessions, and the same here with NARUC. So I just want to say, just living the excitement here, and we have a fabulous panel. Did Andrew or Sherry, does everybody have their bios? Because I don't have anybody's bios. And I cannot properly introduce them. I'll be happy to pronounce everybody's names right. If we don't have your bios, you can introduce yourself. Commissioner Leah Marquez Peterson with the Arizona Corporation Commission, Lon Huber with Duke Energy, Chris Rauscher with Sunrun, and Tilak Subramanian with Eversource. And so we're going to hear from them. We're just going to do a couple. I'm a Fed. I get paid by the slide, so have to watch a couple of slides. But I also want to say before I get going, I do want to talk about the topic, but I also want to give a shout out at least to Commissioner McCabe of the, would you put your hand up? We'll hear from you later, of the Illinois Commissioner, Commissioner Scherger from Minnesota. Matt, just say, and I don't know if are there other commissioners or senior staff in the room, because one, you get to interrupt, you guys, oh, hi. You guys get to enter, Chair, Madam Chair. You guys get to interrupt whenever you want. This is your party we're crashing. And if you're a commissioner or a senior commission staff, please just put your hand up and you can ask a question, you can make a speech, you can tell us how the real world works, whatever it is. So I just want to say that because we're delighted to be working with you. So as always, it's a good thing to follow Jigger's lead. We will not define virtual power plants, but I think we all know that we're talking about large aggregations of distributed energy resources writ large. So that means rooftops solar, it means batteries, it means demand side management, it means smart EV charging or vehicle to grid going forward. It's all of the above. Appliances and buildings. I love buildings, but I wouldn't submit we care about buildings as buildings. We care about buildings because that's where smart HVAC, smart appliances, smart EV charging all come together. It takes place at the building, so they're more of a node than anything else. So I have the clicker. And then we're going to let all of you click your own slides when you're up here. And you're welcome to sit or stand, whatever your pleasure. So the panel uses the delightful name Grid Interactive Efficient Buildings. It's a lot of syllables, but it's making the point, as I just said, that we need to do a lot of things. We need to make our energy consuming equipment grid interactive so that it's controllable and flexible. It has to be energy efficient at the same time. And whether it's commercial or residential, what I just want to say is we want to use smartness not just for the comfort or fun or lighting or security that it provides. Those are all great uses of smartness. We want to make sure clean energy and energy affordability get their fair share of smartness. And that's what a grid interactive building is. If one grid interactive building is good, well, many of them must be better. And I think the one of the issues before us for virtual power plants is what happens when we aggregate grid interactive efficient buildings into communities. And let me interrupt. I see a lot of people taking pictures. Andrew or Jen or somebody, we're distributing the slides in some thumbs up. So feel free to take pictures and we'll make sure we get the slides to everybody who's here. So if we group grid interactive efficient buildings, there can be value. And I will submit the whole will be greater than the sum of the parts. And I will use the example, I am of a certain age, I will use the example of the Beatles. So 4 really good musicians, but together an exceptional band. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's, to me, the metaphor for where we're going here. How do we use the value? How do we use the powers of large numbers so that when Commissioner McKay, oh yeah, you guys didn't have a Super Bowl game this year, but sorry, bad example. Anybody here from Kansas City or Missouri? When everybody in, there you go, everybody in Kansas City is watching the Super Bowl. Well, okay, you may, the fridge may be running harder, but somebody else, well, bad example, because everybody in the service territory is watching, but as you know, that we can be flexible when some people aren't participating, many others are. And that's one of the advantages. Same with solar. If a cloud cover comes, that's fine, as long as there are enough participants in the system. And that's what we're trying to do here. And finally, this is not a definition. These are just a few characteristics. I suspect you might have your own, but we're trying to do many things at once with virtual power plants and using buildings to do it so that we can control them for all those purposes. You heard from Sherry and Jigger earlier for affordability, reliability, decarbonization, energy equity, and resilience, and all the others. And I just want to underscore at the end there what's in a different color, at least at DOE and the loans office in particular. I'll get rid of that thing. No, that's in the way. We're not fussy about this. And we have a lot of resources. We have a lot of lending authority for virtual power plants and for many other parts of the clean energy revolution. And we're not fussy about definitions. So if you have an idea, you say, I want to do this and that, the odds are pretty high we'll say yes. So that's all I want to say. So I am going to end there, and we have questions, and you can enter questions. Andrew, who's going to explain Slido? It ain't me. I am. At some point, we will do something like, how do they know what to type in? They go to slido.com. Yeah, the slide will show up. It'll show up. And then you can enter your question. I said to Andrew, I'm older than Andrew, so I said, can't people just put up their hands? And he said, it's 2023, mate. So, okay, we'll figure that out. But if you want to put up your hands, we'll read your questions into the mics. So we're going to go next. Commissioner Marquez Peterson, you're up first.
Great, thank you.
Do you have slides?
No, I don't, but I can pass it on to Lon.
You can click all you want.
Okay, I'll just click through them all. I'll pass it to you. Oh, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Leah Marquez Peterson. I'm a commissioner from Arizona. So I'm one of about 225 commissioners across the country, many colleagues here, which is great. Thank you to all of those that stayed after the NARUC conference. And thank you to SEPA and to DOE for the invitation. I really do appreciate that. I'm providing one commissioner's perspective on VPP, and I'll start by saying we don't really use the term VPP in Arizona. So, I mean, for those that are not commissioners or in the industry, I think of it as demand response. Also, if you envision Arizona, when it's summertime or in the heat of summer, the sun has gone down, the solar panels aren't working, may still be over 100 degrees. So demand response programs, or VPPs, are pretty important to us in Arizona. From my perspective as a commissioner, some of the best assistance we can provide, because many of us are very excited about the technology and the direction this is going, is really approving DSM plans, keeping programs consistent, determining the prudency of the programs that the utilities are putting before us. And I understand that role, and it's something that I know is important, certainly to me and to my colleagues in Arizona. In Arizona, we have a number of programs. Arizona Public Service, which I know is here in the room, I think they're sitting over there, has had great success with their residential program called Cool Rewards. We have over 52,000 residents in their about 1 million person customer base through APS. And that's one of the greatest, I think, percentage participations that there is out there throughout the US. When I sat them down to say, what's the secret sauce? How are you doing this? It really is around customer education and customer information. I think they also have some great time of use tiered programs that customers take advantage of for the same reason. We're looking for all we can do in Arizona, especially in the heat of the summer. Interestingly, we also have a small business program. We have a commercial program called Peak Solutions. And all of those types of demand response programs, I think, are vitally important. We need to do more, I think, related to commercial and small business. That's something I particularly want to see. When I asked them, I think it was 66, if I'm correct, Rod, commercial businesses that are participating in Peak Solutions. So diving into that, what is that? Is that curtailing the use of equipment at a certain time or different shifts for the use of some of their large equipment? Arizona continues to be one of the fastest growing states in the country. So we see a lot of semiconductor businesses and other types of manufacturers coming to our state. So we really need to get ahead of, I think, commercial and industrial programs from my perspective. The other piece that I've got some notes here to make sure I don't forget things. What's important to me is also the all source RFP. We have embraced that informally at this point in Arizona. It needs to be kind of ratified by our commission, which hopefully we'll do in this upcoming year. But all source RFPs allows this new technology and ideas coming forth, and I think participating in how we're setting that stage for our energy future. So to me, all source RFPs is an important place that our commission can play. We do have issues, though. We might be getting into this with questions, but to have smart appliances or battery or whatever it may look like in the future, a lot of this is dependent on broadband and high-speed internet. And I see a lot of you nodding. In Arizona, we're probably much the same like your state. Our high-speed internet is very dominated by our urban centers. And so rural Arizona, some of our further away areas, high-speed internet, I think, continues to be one of the greater challenges as we grow demand response programs. In addition, just really customer understanding, customer participation. We're still, I think, post-pandemic, and how commercial or industrial customers respond to these programs is also something that's pretty important. I think I'll wrap it up there, and then we can get more into questions. But just know that we continue to focus on reliability and affordability in Arizona. We need to do all we can to handle when we have more demand than we have supply, and when we're seeing these hottest times of the summer. So it's something that really continues to be important for the state of Arizona. But thanks again for inviting me to give comments.
All right, Lon Huber with Duke. I lead up their customer solutions and pricing. And I have to, is this working? All right. And just as Jigger took that courageous stand and said, I will not define VPPs, I tend to agree because it's evolving. And Duke's programs have evolved over the decades. Before I was born in the 70s, there were the starts of the programs around AC and emergency demand response, moved and evolved to different types of switches and use cases, moving from emergency to economic dispatch, from the demand side to help on the supply side. And then it's evolved from there to smarter Wi-Fi connected gadgets that are now doing more than just bulk system emergency or bulk system economics, but we're moving now towards local distribution level optimization and resource use. So that's how it's been evolving. The addition of PV has been phenomenal to the VPP world, in addition to smaller scale batteries. So you've seen that evolution, and it will continue to do so. And it's just going to become more and more crucial that demand side is a core pillar of the resource needs going forward. to hit the clean energy targets that we need to hit by 2050. So you can see Duke has gigawatts of this stuff out in our customers' premises. We have over 1 million connected devices today. And I think the last time I checked with Seth at Energy Hub, we had the largest bring your own thermostat program. Hopefully Arizona hasn't topped me yet, but we're really going all in on these devices, and then figuring out ways to take it to the next level and to start bundling these next generation resources with each other. And we started with a great proposal, and Sunrun was a part of this, of linking rooftop solar to demand reduction technologies to make sure that as a household, it is, that household is reducing its peak demand, cleaning its supply, and providing system benefits. And so that's a smart thermostat to start with, move to batteries, solar energy, and time of use rates all bundled together. So pretty exciting stuff. The next one is a partnership with Ford on vehicle to grid. So it's a vehicle to home and vehicle to grid pilot with the Ford F-150 Lightnings. Of course, Sunrun will be part of that as well. And then the next one is something that we think is really popular to low, moderate income households that are on a fixed budget. When they have a really high bill due to, say, hot weather in the summer, they didn't plan for it, it can put them in crisis. And so we want to put forward a rate design that is flat for them so that they can plan for it. It's the same price every month, but behind the scenes, there's complex price signals that we manage with in devices that they've enrolled. So the more load flexibility, the lower their monthly price that's locked in. And so we've launched that one in Florida. So really exciting things of, again, trying to get the price signals right, trying to get the technology right, and then anticipating what the customer is going to like, because that's the key part. We need customers to adopt this, right? So we've got to make sure that that we're setting it up to anticipate what they would like, and then delight them with the customer experience around it. Now, I promised Sherry, who's a former consumer advocate, just like myself, that I would also bring a little bit of the consumer advocate side. I've actually been in the consumer advocate world longer than the utility world, so it's easy to do. And so I want to make sure we all acknowledge that these resources have a lot of benefits, but it's up to us to figure out how to allocate those benefits. Do we concentrate all those benefits to just the adopter, or do we spread those benefits out to the general body of customers, to non-participating customers, and so forth? And fundamentally, that is the debate in a lot of net metering, spaces and others, of where do you put those benefits? How do you allocate them properly? And so I just want to make sure that we all are cognizant of that and think about how these resources can help the folks that might not have the privilege to put a battery storage in their garage or have an F-150 Lightning. So with that, Chris?
Real quick, Lon, you talked about vehicles to home, vehicles to grid. So I assume that includes smart charging as part of your portfolio?
That's right, of course, absolutely. Yeah, that's the first building blocks. At first, it's the just static sort of, or I would say TOU rates with critical peak pricing, and then managed charging via telematics or a smart charger, and then you get to the vehicle to grid or home.
Chris.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Thanks to DOE and SEPA for having us here. This is a really exciting topic that I'm sure we could all talk about for the rest of the day. I know I don't shut up about this topic, so I'm excited to have this opportunity. I'm with Sunrun, and we've been managing DERs for 17 years or so now, and we are a leader in the VPP space. As you can see on the slide, there are a number of different sort of flavors of VPPs that we have pioneered at Sunrun. We were the first residential aggregator to bid into a wholesale market in ISO New England, and we operated that bid this past summer. We also piloted in Massachusetts connected solutions with National Grid, one of Tillot's utility colleagues here, putting batteries into connected solutions, the Bring Your Own Device program, I think 6 years ago. And then we've also signed a number of bilateral contracts with utilities to provide VPP services in a contractual manner. The most recent one of those is in Puerto Rico, where we signed a deal with PREPA, the utility there, for 7,000 homes with solar and batteries to provide power to the grid 260 days a year. So this is cycling every single weekday to take the stress off of the system and to defer the need to run fossil fuel power plants. So there's many different avenues to get to VPP services, and there are many different services that VPPs can provide: generation, capacity, peak reduction, ancillary services, frequency response, all sorts of different things. And I don't think it's the role of the panel to get lost in terms here, because I think that's sort of a useless exercise. But for me, what I like to think of is how can we keep this as simple as possible? And fundamentally, what we're talking about here is just putting devices on timers, and in our case, mostly batteries on timers, to provide those services that the grid needs. And today, for us, it's largely solar and batteries, but in the very near future, it's the whole home, right? It's aggregating all of the devices in the home together. All of our customers in the country, we have almost 800,000 customers now, and we're the second largest owner of solar assets in the country, believe it or not. We're bigger than every other utility scale developer, except for NextEra. And so aggregating all of that resource together to provide services to the grid. So thermostat, a bidirectional EV, we're Ford's partner on the F-150 Lightning, a battery, heat pumps, and providing that as a resource to the grid. And the scale here is tremendous. It's huge. A long-range F-150 Lightning has 10 times the capacity of a Tesla Powerwall, right? So you could provide services, just use half the battery and you've got 5 Powerwalls there in the home, and you still have plenty of energy left to drive around on. So the scale here is enormous, and I think if I want to leave the group with one thing, it's that this isn't a future-looking thing. This is, we've been doing this for years now in partnership with utilities, and there are very simple programs that we can use, and we'd like to spread those throughout the country.
All right. The challenge and privilege of going last is I can just say ditto. So, but we'll start with Commissioner Peterson and the other commissioners, staff in the room. Thank you for what you do. You guys have one heck of a tough job, especially getting into this world. So I don't want your job. I really appreciate what you do. So thank you for what you do. Coming back from distributed tech, it felt like the internet days, giddy days, right? Very overwhelming, a lot of exuberance, certainly a lot of optimism. But for me, at least, it forced me back to the basics. What problems are we trying to solve here, right? In New England, for instance, to give you an example, ISO New England procures roughly 32,000 megawatts through the forward capacity market. A quarter of that is used just through less than 5% of the hours in the year, right? So is there an opportunity to reduce the installed capacity requirement, really optimize that? Because that's a very, very expensive way to run the grid. Then you can get into reliability, resiliency, GHG emissions at every level, right? Right down to the municipality, right down to certain vulnerable customer segments or critical care facilities. So how do you actually, and the good thing is DERs provide an enormous opportunity, right? If you can aggregate them, choreograph the dispatch and do it carefully, they can be a huge asset, can really help mitigate this, but you have to do it carefully. As I learned at distributed tech, doing it wrong can actually make things worse. So that is an important point. Some of the programs we have in New England, the traditional ISO level demand response, we do have a lot of retail programs, which you just touched on. One is what you call the daily dispatch, which tends to be a lot of batteries, just July and August, 2 hours during the peak hours, we just dispatch it. Then we have what we call more of a bring your own device and pay for performance type program, where it's really a wide portfolio of asset types, right? C&I load curtailment, thermal storage, battery storage, EVs through telematics or chargers. And through that, our experience on the ground has been about 3/4 of who responds there is largely large C&I curtailment. And of the remaining, a lot of demand thermostats. The EVs, not a lot of EVs were connected, so which brings the question, and I think we need to think differently about them through managed charging programs and the like for EVs, given when and how they are used. And the last point I'll make is, which I think everyone touched on, is we in this room get very wonky in the program design, the policies and rates and everything else. But we have to really, it's all about customer, how you pull customers into this, right? Not how we put programs out. And this is true for any solutions. I know one of the things you've teed up, commissioners, around large C&I customers. That was the one we had to go back to the drawing board on. How do you engage large C&I customers? I was at one last week, and they think very differently. It's not about the technology. You have to get the finance folks and speak that language. So get into that more later on.
Great, thank you. Now well, Andrew does that. I do want to give a shout out by name to the people who organized this today's session. So Andrew Drudonic from SEPA, Jen Downing in the Loan Programs Office, Danielle Sass-Burnett, Danielle of NARUC, and Joe Palladino of the Office of Electricity at DOE. I don't know if Joe's physically in there. So thank you guys for organizing things. So Andrew, while you do that and tell people how to do Slido, one of your colleagues will tell me the password on the SEPA iPad, so I can read such questions. Thank you.
I can do this. I don't know how to do it.
All right, I'm gonna start out. So look, we heard a lot about those end users, or is it DOE? We say those people who keep messing up our nice science experiments, but. So tell me, and Commissioner, you and I chatted about this a little bit before, and I won't ask about virtual. You can answer in terms of virtual power plant setting or just a distributed energy resource setting. Well, tell us how, in your sense, in Arizona, how end users engage. Are they aware? Do they care? Are they willing to participate? And if not, of course, the next question is, if not, how do we do it? And then I'd like to ask that of all of you.
No, I think it was very telling as we went through the panel. We've got to keep it simple. It's about lessening demand. It's about me as a family and my children and my husband saving money on our bill. And how do we do that? So how you communicate that or educate each of the families and how that's translated to the commissioners who are voting on your programs, I think is pretty key. In Arizona, whether that's a smart pool pump or HVAC system or interconnecting with electric vehicles or whatever it may mean, we've got to keep the program simple and you've got to incentivize the families to participate from a residential perspective. I think it takes a lot more slicing and dicing with the commercial and industrial customers, as was mentioned, because they're really looking at that same bottom line financial situation, but you've got a lot more parameters that need to be in place. I absolutely think there's interest in this, but people don't understand it and they may not be aware of your program. As I mentioned, that kind of urban-rural split, we certainly feel that in Arizona. So as you're able to expand and have geographic diversity around your program so that it's actually spread out across the territory, I think that's pretty important also, because I do think there's a lot of interest in it.
Before I let you respond, let me just say, we all know, and when somebody referenced this, non-participants benefit too from VPPs, as long as they're air breathers or care about a reliable grid or trying to avoid the CapEx peakers. So is that part, how does it work for a commissioner, and any commissioner can respond? How do you think about their non-participants, both in terms of the cost, but certainly in terms of the benefits that will accrue if VPP shows up in town?
I think theoretically you're absolutely right. I don't think the public understands that though.
Yeah.
So I think we need to do a lot of work related to educating. So whether that's
Your 274 fellow commissioners?
225 or something.
What's that?
Yeah, I guess it's also, since this is a national space, we're very different commission by commission. I mean, a lot of us have similar mission. In our state, we're a body of 5, we're elected. We're elected statewide, so we are out there touching the community quite a bit, as are the appointed commissioners, but might be a little different perspective. And we're laser focused on affordability and reliability being really key. We're sandwiched between California and Texas and other states. California's had its issues with rolling blackouts and different decisions they've made in their state, and it certainly impacts ours. I mean, all of that is kind of layering on as we support or modify DSM plans and different programs you put before us. For me, ultimately, it comes down to, reliability and how do we educate the public about the benefits of these types of demand response programs.
On Ms. Tilak, on end users, participants, and non-participants? Thoughts?
So a few things. Maybe start on the non-participant side. We have to think of, at the end of the day, how much are we compensating? What's our cost-benefit framework? For energy efficiency and DR, you have cost-effectiveness tests, and you can get 2.0s, 3.0s. And what that means is that non-participants are saving. If it's a 1.0, sort of break even, right? And so when you think about VPPs, well, maybe you have a community one that you only are paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour for. But for maybe the same technology at a home, you're paying 18 cents a kilowatt hour for. And how is that fair? You have to look at how that all hits the cost effectiveness test, and again, where those benefits are going, and are you maximizing the dollar to the greatest extent possible? Because the climate crisis is going to take all the resources we can throw at it. And so you don't want to be inefficient with those resources. And so I think that's what we owe non-participants in all of this. And then I think in terms of participants, there's definitely a lot of confusion. I think folks saw the highlights from months ago with Xcel Energy. You had customers that signed up to a thermostat control program that benefited substantially over the years that it was never used, right? So they accrued financial benefits. And then when Xcel finally had to call the event, they were upset and they didn't have overrides. So then you can talk about user experience as well. And so there you go. You've been paying for this benefit. People either forget about it, they didn't exactly know what they were signed up for, and then you have a press that likes sensational stories, and it sort of blows up. So we have to think of that customer experience, and then we have to know that these things don't. There's some limitations. You cannot run most likely an 8-hour thermostat event where you shut off the thermostat for 8 hours, right? You know that there's going to be some opt-outs as you go past the certain amount of hour thresholds. So we have to be smart. We have to derate these things. We have to understand consumer behavior in the summer, in the winter, on the weekends, on holidays. So this is complex stuff. So we need data analytics. And again, we need to be in that customer-centric mindset as we do all this. And again, not forgetting those non-participants.
I think an elected commissioner in Arizona knows not to turn off thermostats for 8 hours. I'm guessing that's your core competency.
Where I would go is from a participating customer viewpoint, whether it's the California heat waves and public safety shutoff events, winter storms in Texas, Puerto Rico, where we have very frequent outages there. Customers are demanding resilient power through batteries, and the adoption rate is following the solar adoption rate. It's really incredible. So if customers are going to want to get those batteries anyway, we can help defray the costs in partnering with utilities by enrolling those batteries into grid service VPP programs, paying the participating customer, and thereby reducing the cost of that resiliency, which is what they really want, to the customer. And in many cases, like in California with time of use rates, arbitraging their bill on a monthly basis. So it's just saving them on a month-to-month basis on their bill. And then for non-participating customers, I completely agree with the commissioner and with Lon that there are enough savings to go around. So sort of by definition, these programs should be shared savings programs where some of the savings gets paid to the performing customer or through the aggregator to the customer, and then the rest of the savings goes to the rate base. Utilities know what the next marginal unit is going to cost them to fire, so pay the VPP something slightly less than that, and don't fire that unit. That's very easy in a place like Puerto Rico where the loading order is written down on a piece of paper. But it's also pretty simple in places like ISO New England, where all of your costs, flow through a single coincident peak hour in the year. So if you just target that hour as much as possible, you can reduce the cost.
Look, we'll cover that. We have a question here that was directed to Lon, but I think it's good for both utilities. If I could put you on the hot seat. Somebody wants to know, how do the Eversource and Duke investors make money off VPPs?
You want to go first?
No, you go first.
Okay. I like this topic. Why? Because you always have to understand what incentives does a business have, right, to engage in these things. And I believe that a utility should have skin in the game. And because when I try to hire the best talent to work on my teams, if I say, hey, you get to help the company lose money, isn't that great for your career? Like, no one's going to join that VPP team if they're there to help the utility lose money, right? And so what we've had set up in partnership with regulators, consumer advocates in our states is a shared savings model like that Chris alluded to. So we basically have a 90-10 split. We get 10% of the net savings, and then 90% flows back to non-participants. So 90-10. So that's our model. Obviously, lost revenues, is included in that as well. But that's a way to have some skin in the game, make sure that the utility has the right incentives to maximize the deployment of these resources, but also in the most cost-effective manner. As I said, we get shared savings on net benefits, not gross, right? So if we say just really, load up on marketing and make the incentives very high, there will be no net savings, meaning we won't have any earnings. There'll be nothing for non-participants. So you've got to be very mindful of what type of business incentives you're structuring to make sure that everybody has skin in the game and the right incentives to really make sure that these programs bring that value that Chris mentioned, because these can be really win-win programs for participants and non-participants.
So the way we are structured in New England is a little bit different than the shared savings model. We are in a deregulated environment, so we don't own any generation. And what's for energy efficiency and distributed, DR and the like, what we get is we're kept whole on any basically revenue requirements because of lack of collections, because of reduced kilowatt hours. And then we have a performance incentive. If we deliver on the outcomes, we get rewarded. I think that's worked very well, as the New England has really invested heavily in scaling up energy efficiency. That model's worked very well. As we go forward, with VPPs and the like, and penetration of EVs, I think there's going to be a lot more, less on the whole system-wide peak, more about local distribution peaks and how do you address those problems. I don't know that we have quite solved the economic question there. I think there's certainly more work to do, but I think there's a good framework that's there already.
Thanks. I'm going to ask this one as a lightning round question. Well, first I'm going to ask any of the commissioners in the room, you'll respond if you want to. Are you willing to let your regulated utilities make money off VPPs, and/or are you willing to penalize them financially if you think they're not meeting your standards on VPPs? Is that part of the mix, or not quite yet? Anybody want to tackle that of the commissioners?
Anyone else want to tackle that?
Performance regulation? Yeah.
Go on, I see a hand back there.
Commissioner Scherger from Minnesota. We have people online. If you'd wait for the mic, please.
Thank you. I'm Matt Scherger, Commissioner of Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. So it's something that we're discussing and looking into. We have initial steps in performance-based rate making, where we've established key metrics that we're measuring and tracking. And one of those metrics is focused on demand response. And in that initial order, we specifically tag the potential for incentives around demand response. So we're in the early stages, but it's something that we're certainly open to. So I think that question that was asked, that was just answered, is really an important one, because as a regulator of investor-owned utilities in a vertically integrated state, retail rate regulated state, there isn't a natural incentive for the utility to want to do this. So we're looking for models like the one that Juan described. And before I turn over the mic, I just want to mention the Excel example was not in my state.
I should have clarified that one, yeah.
And I'll add to that in Arizona, we've created a docket related to this. And so we're capturing information. So it is something we're studying also.
David, could I just make a quick point on that as well, which is that no one said the way utilities, no one in the audience said or on the panel said the way utilities should make money off of VPPs is rate-basing smart meters or assets or batteries. And I think that's really telling. I'm hoping that means that's a consensus view, that utilities don't need to be doing that. But I would just make the point that your utility does not have smart meters, right? I'm not sure if Duke does or not. But smart meters are not a necessary technology to have VPPs. And in fact, the lack of VPPs is not a technology problem. It's a policy problem.
And I want to put in a pitch The U.S. Department of Energy, with the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, we have enormous financial resources for utilities and OEMs and other players there. We can't, well, we get to be good cop. We're not penalizing anybody. We don't have that. That's your guys' job. But we do have, whether it's loan guarantees from us at LPO or funds from other parts of the department. So again, we do want to put money, US DOE and the US government wants to put money on the table for VPPs.
May I add something to that? I wrote it down, so I'll be sure not to forget, but I heard Secretary Grantham speak earlier today also about VPPs, and they have demonstration projects, funding pilots, and she spoke about hosting roundtables for input from public and private stakeholders again this morning. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for your companies to plug into the work at DOE. So just a little plug for you.
Good, thank you, we appreciate it. The one I wanted to do is a lightning round. Is a couple of people have asked in different ways, what are the barriers? Okay, they love the speeches, implied. What are the barriers? Why aren't we seeing more of it? So just pick a couple, lightning round. Let's start with TLAC and move down to the commissioner. Just pick a couple of things that you think are the biggest barriers to VPPs.
I would, I guess I start with the customer end, right? What is it? We got to get off this wonky trip we're on about VPPs or demand response. If you look at the case of large commercial and industrial, as an example, right? Trying to get to there's a lot of awareness around energy at the shop floor level, very little at the CFO's office, I can tell you that. So how are you going to get that? And for us, in order to get that, I had to go hire the folks who could go have that financial, because utilities typically don't have that in their account executive ranks. So there's a lot of organizational dimension to it. At the end of the day, it's about economics. It has to make economic sense for the customer, and we have to be able to connect those dots. And to me, I think we can do a lot better job on that.
Okay. Lightning round.
Chris? I would say overcomplicating this. If you just take TILOC's Connected Solutions program, peak reduction, put it in every utility in the country, we would be halfway there or most of the way there.
It's valuation, making sure we're actually valuing these resources the right way, knowing that in the future our capacity is not going to be fossil heavy, it's going to be clean energy heavy. So how do you make sure you have a level playing field between fossil-free customer assets and fossil-free grid assets? Because that's sort of how you do that cost effectiveness test. And then speed to market on the regulatory side. I wanted to file a program in response to sky-high wholesale market prices in one of my states, and they're like, okay, realistically this will be approved in about a year, and then it'll take a while to launch it, so probably 2 years. So sometimes you miss these key moments to get more demand response enrollment, just because it takes so long to get a program out there.
Yep, and I would add ditto, but I'd also add the broadband high-speed internet item I brought up earlier, as well as for the utilities sitting in the room, the real strategic analysis on what the customers are looking for, whether it be residential, commercial, industrial, and that you have the trained folks in place to meet with the right people within each of those customers within your state. How you're incentivizing customers, customer choice, involvement, communication. I wrote also that as we move forward with batteries and so on, just particularly sensitive to the training of fire departments, the working with mayors and councils that are fully trained on the utilization of battery storage in homes as we move in that direction. So I think there's just some education that needs to occur.
Thanks. Let me go back. We talked about it. I think Chris used the term flavors, or maybe you did, Lon. So you heard what Jigger said, and I said we're very open. But just do you feel that would you like to see commissions or other government bodies or utilities pushing certain kinds of VPPs more than others? Do you want to see more solar? Do you want to see more demand side? Do you want to see more CNI? Whatever that means. Would you like to see a push for flavors, or do you want let 1,000 flavors bloom time?
All of the above. We want anything and everything. I think you have to get those price signals right, and those prices can be either like the rate design or the actual like program compensation. You get that right and technology agnostic, and then you let the market go from there.
Let me tease out getting prices right. So there's wholesale prices, there's retail prices or tariffs, let's call it, and then you said program participation. Is that what one would call rebates or incentives. Is that the same?
Essentially, yeah, incentives, and sometimes those incentives are tied to market. Sometimes they're decoupled because you have distribution values. You don't typically have that in a wholesale market construct.
Okay, but let me push in the sense that if you're not from Arizona and not from California, not that many people have time, not that many residential and small commercial customers have time of use rates.
Well, so okay, so that was a topic that I
Yeah.
was on a panel with like 2 days ago.
And most of them don't want it. I mean, we know
And
that
that's
after.
why we have that fixed rate too for customers that don't want that price risk signal. But you do really need those smart AMI meters for that. I mean, unless the program costs.
It's necessary, but it's not sufficient, right? Because
There's different. I would disagree with my friend Lon here in terms of many different flavors, because the more different programs with different DERMS platforms, different contracts that we have, the harder it is to participate at scale, right? And so I think it's about a state going with a model that's tested and tried and true and has high participation levels that's adapted for their particular state. But a lot of the back end stuff can be the same. So the same DERMS platform, the same performance obligations, that type of thing. And I have to give a shout out to some partners, Solar United Neighbors and Vote Solar. They just came out with a new white paper. It's very short, very digestible, high level, that shows states, here's a blueprint for how to put these programs in place. So I think the resources are out there. And then just on the TOU piece, really quickly, there's as we know, we've debated this forever, but there's two different ways to get at that value. You can do it on the bill with TOU, or you can do it through a grid service payment, which is revenue as opposed to savings. And I think we're seeing most places head toward the grid service payment side.
But I do want to clarify, I never said 1,000 different programs. I said all the different technologies. You can structure a program
Agreed.
that handles all the different technologies in one nice framework. So that's what I meant, not 1,000 different programs.
And can I toss in just again that simplicity, smart home, lots of technologies, but marketing it as smart home program or whatever it is, just keeping it simple.
I guess what I would say is, as regulators, the best thing you can do is define the problem as precisely as you can, right? And with whatever parameters around it. So what are you trying to solve for at the local level or the system level? And then you have BCR models that give some guidance on what level of subsidies you could. What the BCR models don't capture, and this is something we're running into with all the climate legislation in New England, they don't capture GHG stuff. They are very energy focused. They're not GHG focused. So that's something we're going to have to evolve around. How do you capture that benefit? How do you price that into this whole thing? More work to do there.
interesting. And look, and we all know about the many benefits that VPPs can bring. That's a good thing. The hard part is it's a harder story to tell because it's some of this and some of that and some of the other thing, right? So what, again, let me turn to any of the commissioners in the room. Are there, do any of the commissioners want to ask any questions or make any comments at this point?
I just say, I wish you were on that panel on smart rate design, because that would have been a good contrarian perspective.
Yeah.
No, we don't need better rate design.
That's not what I said. We've been doing this for a decade together. We're older than we look.
Travis will love you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. You're not a commissioner. We have a not a commissioner question. Any commissioners? We only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to give the commissioners, okay? You've been working for 3 days. You get a, yes, sir. And introduce yourself, please.
My name's Brian Wilkie. I work for National Grid, so it's nice to hear other people say good things about us. I was having this debate with a commissioner from Wisconsin. I can't remember her name, but I think we've had a lot of challenges getting customers to enroll in our programs, and so I would like to hear your perspective on default out rather than every customer gets enrolled in a program like this when they connect to your system, and then making them unenroll when they don't like it for whatever reason. Because I think we structured a managed charging program for EVs, and we found, our regulators want the program to be effective, but none of our customers want the program. So not because they don't care about the $5 of savings. Just be honest. Like, I'm a Con Ed customer. My bill's $140 a month. $5 is meaningless to me. So I like the idea of socializing all the savings across the rate base. I think that's an interesting idea, but I'd like to hear what you think about like default in as opposed to have to sign up.
And I'll add, as from a commissioner perspective, at APS specifically, because I've asked this question, the ease for the customer. So they opt into this program, they can leave the program without penalty as they'd like. But they've had great success. People don't feel railroaded into the program. So they have some 52,000 customers taking advantage of it now. So I would keep your customers' mind, first and foremost.
I think it really depends on what type of program it is. So for instance, a behavioral demand response program, that, and we're launching this soon, that's an opt-out program. So everybody's opted in, you'll receive, hey, it's going to be a peak day. If you could do anything, that would be great. I think peak time rebates possibly could also be another one where that's just all carrot, there's no stick. I think when you start to deal with really complex rate designs with dynamic prices that can really go up, I think that's when you start to get into that territory of, oh, I don't know if I should expose everybody to this and then let them have that one bad day in the summer. So I think it depends, but I tend to really follow the behavioral economics of like when you can make that nudge and it's not going to create those big sensational headlines, then you should have it so that it's more of an opt-out setup.
So our experience, so in the EV case, we've got some programs in a different docket, which basically talks about helping customers put in some subsidies towards wiring or getting a smart charger. In that case, yes, we would want to go automatic enrollment, saying as part of taking the subsidy, the bargain is you're enrolling in the managed charging program. But where we ran into issues or questions where you got to be navigated a little more carefully is case in point, we try to do that with thermostats. If you give rebates at point of sale, can you automatically enroll them? But then you get into the situation where you've got an elderly customer in a vulnerable state where you're automatically adjusting the thermostat. Those are the things you got to be careful about, the automatic enrollment. So we actually didn't do automatic enrollment, which necessarily does mean your penetration goes down quite a bit. But that's the trade-off.
So real quick, we're about to end this session. So it's a real lightning round, no semicolons, just real quick. When we reconvene year after year, but 5 years from now, what would you like to get to where we need to get with VPPs 5 years out? What's a single change, success you would like to see that you think is most important? I'm starting with you, Tula.
I would say, I think it's been touched on various, it's just an alignment with regulators, us and customers. Those are the three entities, right, on what the economic alignment and problem statement alignment and that.
Chris?
I'd be happy if we weren't talking about VPPs because every home is just all electric and operating in sync with the grid.
I would like another gigawatt of VPPs on my system within 5 years.
A gigawatt or he's going home.
That's right.
Commissioner?
I'd like to see expansion to small commercial customers in a meaningful way.
It's great. Now, thank you. Before we thank this fantastic panel, I want to point out this. We crossed a new threshold. It was just reported today. The world has spent $1 trillion on electric vehicles. We just hit that. And the globally, and the US in particular, is going 50% year on year on EVs. We all witness it, but $1 trillion so far and going up at 50% per year, which means the next panel on vehicles and grid is essential, and I hope you stay for that. But before we do that, I just want to thank Tilak Subramanian from Eversource, Chris Rauscher from Sunrun, Lon Huber from Duke, and Commissioner Marquez Peterson from the Arizona Commission. Thank you all.